Welcome to this segment taken from our JREVOLUTION Neogenesis program.
What is your soul searching for? How are you trying to satisfy that inner emptiness? And is it working? Have you been able to find any type of long-term satisfaction, contentment or peace? Probably not. You are not alone. The problem is universal. Why? To understand why you feel this way, you first need to understand how you are made. You are three. The human being is made up of three parts: the body, which is your physical body, the soul, which is your mind, will and emotions, and your spirit. This is your inner spirit, man or being. You may be wondering how this is related to the inner emptiness, loneliness, and desperation you feel on the inside. Well, when you feel any of these emotions, what is the first thing you do? You try your best to fill that inner emptiness within you, either with money, relationships, experiences, career, sex, or power. If you've tried all these things, you'll know that the satisfaction you get from them is short-lived. The inner emptiness is still there. Why is this? The reason is that your problem is not physical or mental or emotional. Otherwise, all these things would have been enough. But something is missing, and you need to understand that what is missing is not in your soul or your body, but deep on the inside, in your spirit. Many people confuse soul and spirit and speak of them as one or use them interchangeably, but it's important to understand that they are two different parts within us. One, our soul, communicates and has its outworking in the natural and is seen in the operation of our day-to-day lives. The other, our spirit, communicates and receives from an unseen spiritual realm. You are probably aware that you have a soul and you use it regularly in your decisions and emotions every single day, but you may not be familiar with your spirit. To demonstrate why being a three-part being is important, let's compare the human being to an animal. The human versus the animal. There is no animal or creature, big or small, that has been created like the human being. An animal may have a body and a soul like you, but the one thing it does not have is a spirit. An animal has a physical body it has to feed and look after. It also has a soul, a simple mind, emotions, and behavioural patterns learnt from parents or hereditary, mostly operating by instinct. An animal does not have the third component, the spirit. This is the key differentiator. You can distinctly see the difference between a human and an animal. A human has the ability to plan, to build, to construct, create, manage, lead, and govern. An animal does not possess the ability to do these things. Let's continue to explore the human being. In the book of Genesis, it explains how we as human beings were created. It reads as follows: "Then God said, let us, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, make man in our image according to our likeness, and let them have complete authority over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, the cattle, and over the entire earth, and over everything that creeps and crawls on the earth." God is our originator and our creator, making us sons of God. God is a three-part being, Father, Son, and Spirit, and therefore so are we. Besides being made in the image of God, we are also given authority and dominion as sons of God to rule over all that He had made. But this authority we ultimately lost. For now, what is important is to understand that if God is spirit and you are made in His image and likeness, then you are created with a spirit as well. Now, even though you have a spirit within you, it has been cut off from its source. We will explain the exact reasons behind why your spirit has been cut off a bit later on. But for now, it's important to understand that the feeling of dissatisfaction, frustration, and ongoing emptiness you struggle with is because of a disconnected spiritual state. Your spirit has a very specific need. Just like a fish has a need for water, or a plant has need for soil, or your body has a need for food, your spirit also has a very specific need, which we will discuss in more detail shortly. We consistently meet the needs of our body through food, sleep, rest, or relaxation. We meet the needs of our soul through relationships, education, hobbies, and in many other ways. But there is one essential part of us that we need to understand in order to meet its needs, and that is our spirit. As mentioned, in our current state, we find that our spirit man is cut off and separated and not functioning as it should. This is an example of how we function when our spirit is cut off or separated. This diagram illustrates how most human beings are functioning at present. They are living out of realm of soul and body, and there is a disconnect from their spirit. Now let's look at the next diagram to understand how we should be functioning. In this diagram, we can see a connection between spirit, soul, and body. When our spirit is connected, then our day-to-day living is conducted out of the spirit being, which was the original intent for human beings.
Because of our spiritual state, or the state of our spirit beings, we are cut off and disconnected. We have a universal, global, and spiritual epidemic. It is an epidemic that has an impact on the entire human race, and most people are completely unaware of it. We call this epidemic sin. Now, sin may be something you hear spoken about in churches or in religious circles. Most people don't really know what the big deal about sin is or how it impacts their day-to-day lives. They just view it as something religious or something that priests and religious people talk about. However, it is very important to note that in your life and the world around us, sin is alive, active, and operational, and it has a clear pathway or trajectory and an impact on your day-to-day life. Like any weapon or firearm which has a trajectory or intent to cause and inflict pain, death, and injury, sin also has a trajectory that impacts every single one of us. If you are alive and breathing, then sin has had an impact and influence on your life. Most people don't understand sin. Some might feel they have done a lot of things wrong in their life, therefore making them sinful. Or some might feel like they're good and decent people, therefore sin doesn't really apply or relate to them. Sin entered the world thousands of years ago, and if you take a careful look around you, it is clear that mankind has been on a trajectory of brokenness and self-destruction. You may have heard the story of Adam and Eve, and if you have, it may sound like a fairy tale that you've heard from your parents or some story you've learned in Sunday school. But it's important to note that at this point, through Adam and Eve, sin entered the world, and every one of us have been born with the same sinful nature as our forefather Adam. You may be asking, what's so sinful about what Adam and Eve did? Or maybe you're not familiar with the story and you're just not sure about what exactly happened. Originally, Adam and Eve, who were the first human beings created, lived in open communication, dependence, and relationship with God, in the same way that children are dependent and in relationship with their parents. One day, Adam and Eve decided to operate independently of God. They did this by choosing to eat from a specific tree that God had warned them about and had firmly instructed them not to eat from. This tree was placed in the garden with them and signified their free will to choose to live apart and independently from God should they choose to do so. However, because we weren't created to live separately from God, it has significant consequences and impact on human beings when they are disconnected, especially spiritually and your spiritual life will always have an impact on every other part of your life, including your soul and body. Adam and Eve disobeyed and ate from the tree. And by them eating from the tree, they exercised their free will, which resulted in spiritual separation from God, causing spiritual death in humankind. This decision of our forefather has impacted us to this day. And because of our spiritual state, we are disconnected from God and live independently from Him. It may seem that independence is not such a bad thing, but it has a devastating effect on us spiritually, resulting in the emptiness and inner void we struggle with today. We were never created or intended to live apart or disconnected from God, and this results in the inner struggle we experience. When we live outside of God, our nature is sinful. From that point on in history, we have reproduced after our forefather Adam. And man has spiraled into perpetual sinful behavior and destruction ever since. A very easy way to demonstrate that we are born with a sinful nature is to look at a child. The sinful nature is very clearly demonstrated in children. A child has to be taught to do the right thing. Ever wondered why they don't just automatically do the right thing and behave the right way?
Thanks for listening to this segment from our JREVOLUTION program. During times of darkness, struggle, and soul sickness, we can often question the meaning of life. To understand the true meaning of life, you first need to understand how you are made as a human being, as well as key spiritual foundations and principles you need to apply to your life. Find truth, peace, and fulfillment, and experience true transformation with the JREVOLUTION program. You can access our full program online or sign up to an upcoming face-to-face or webinar on www.jrevolution.net/program. Our program is totally free for anyone, anywhere to complete.